So you guys help us out with your favorite DFS plays tonight.
Yeah, Paul, what is your favorite play going to be at center?
Jesse, I'm going to fade a few of the bigger names because of the quality of their opposition. When you consider McDavid and Draisaitl in Winnipeg, they face the Jets and Connor Hellebuck, one of the best goalies in the hockey. The Leafs host the defensive-minded Preds and Juicy Saros, so that negates a little bit of Tavares and Matthews' value. Barkov hosting the physical, tight-checking Penguins. Islanders, I say no thanks. Those are tough matchups for those stars. So once I get past them, I land on Mika Zibanejad of the Rangers, who faces a disheveled Montreal club. Oh boy, do I love saying that. That has to be one of the longest injury lists of any team in the league. And they may be forced to play their third-string goalie against a guy who has 8 points in his last 10 games. I'll gladly pay the $7,300 to see Zibanejad take a bite out of the Habs tonight.
All right, where are you going to be rolling for your favorite play at center, Pete?
I definitely agree with Paul about getting either Zibanejad or Panarin into your lineup for this favorable matchup for the Rangers against the Habs. That said, I think there's some value here in recently returning Kevin Hayes from the Philadelphia Flyers. And I just like the price point in DraftKings, $3,900. He came back, had an assist on the power play in his season debut for the Flyers, who have been kind of like hot and cold. They win, then they lose, then they win again. So it's like, I think that they have a good potential here against the Calgary Flames at home. He's on the second line in a spot that Derek Brassard was really productive in, with Cam Atkinson and Joel Farabee, two goal-scoring wings on his side at even strength. So I think a good chance that that second line or second power play gets going here for the Flyers, who are a sneaky team on any given night. And Kevin Hayes, one of their best two-way players, is now back in the equation. So I like Kevin Hayes as a value play at center.
What about at wing, Pete? Who's your favorite play there?
I mean, I like Andrew Mangiapane for the Calgary Flames in that same game. Obviously, I mentioned Artemi Panarin. Can't go wrong there. I have him in my mock DFS lineup as my spend-up for wing. I also have Troy Terry, because why wouldn't I have Troy Terry or anybody else right now? He's on a 14-game point streak. But that's obvious at this point. He's the breakout player of the young NHL season so far. But Mangiapane, 10 goals in 15 games. That's top 10 in the league right now. I mean, I think Mangiapane is leading the Calgary Flames in goals so far. He's now no longer playing on the third line. He's on the second line with Sean Monahan. So I think that's a good spot for him. And I just think that most people in the larger scheme of things in the NHL this year don't realize that Mangiapane is one of the best goal scorers in the league. 3 goals on 10 shots in his past 4 games and tied for 6th in the NHL. So I'm rolling with the bread eater, Mangiapane.
Now, speaking of bread, Alex Ovechkin, Paul, $9,000, $1,000 more than the next guy.
Well, you know what? And one of the next guys is Willie Nylander of the Maple Leafs for $8,000. And speaking of Ovechkin, Willie Nylander is the most prolific shot maker next to Ovi in the entire league, and for my money has been the most consistent Leaf forward this season. He does get the tough matchup against the Preds that I talked about before, but since he's scheduled to line up on Toronto's second scoring line with Tavares, he'll likely avoid the top checking options of the Preds, and they'll be focused on Matthews and Marner, of course. I say take Slick Willie, with the reminder that he's featured on this club's potent power play, surrounded by the rest of the club's big 4 forwards.
All right, Paul, take us to the blue line. What's your favorite play at defense?
You know, while I'm tempted, Jesse, to go with Brent Burns because he's the most productive blue liner on the board, averaging 14.7 DraftKings points per game, I see a stack of opportunity for the Rangers that Pete and I have both touched on, following up on the injury reference that I made earlier. In fact, I gladly pay $7,200 to get Adam Fox, the Broadway Blue Shirts power play quarterback and big minute eater on the blue line, logging almost 25 minutes a game. That means he'll have a say in lots of Rangers scoring opportunities tonight.
Pete, which defender catches your fancy?
I definitely think it's a night to stack the New York Rangers. Can't argue against that one, but can argue about the price a little bit. If Montreal keeps that lower scoring, even in a loss, that you could see maybe not worth spending up for at over $7,000. In my normal strategies for defensemen, I usually don't spend up. I try to find some value. So I'm going with Shayne Gostisbehere. Will probably have a low roster percentage when you consider the Coyotes are the single worst team in the NHL this season. but he has 12 points in 15 games. He's their leading scorer by far. Talk about bounce back city right now for Gostisbehere, who used to run the Flyers power play back in the day with all that talent, but is making the most of his opportunity here for a bottom dweller. And yeah, Shayne Gostisbehere inside the top 10 among scoring at the defenseman position. Who could have ever imagined that would be the case? And for $4,500, I would take that any day of the week. So I got Ghost Bear as one of my top 2 defensemen for the upcoming slate.
Hey, Pete, what about net, man? Do you have a favorite play there?
I will go with the Minnesota Wild goaltender at home against the San Jose Sharks, whoever it ends up being. You look at Kaapo Kahkonen, he's won consecutive games, has been efficient in that stretch for Minnesota. He's still rookie eligible, so watch out for him in all fantasy formats. But then Cam Talbot as well has a great record this year. I think he's one of the steadiest options in the league in terms of experienced goaltenders with a strong defense in front of him. Matt Dumba's having a great year. There's Jared Spurgeon, Goligoski. They have a loaded defense even after they parted ways with Ryan Suter and bought out his contract. Minnesota's defense is strong as ever. They're near the top of the Central Division with the slow start for the Avalanche. And I just think that the Minnesota goalie against kind of like a flailing Sharks team, the Sharks are coming back down to earth right now. The other 2 California teams I trust a little bit more in the LA Kings and the Anaheim Ducks. So I will go with the safe bet in Cam Talbot at home against the Sharks.
Paul, who are you considering in the crease?
I've got 3 choices, and one of them's obvious. We've been hammering on the Rangers-Montreal tilt, so why wouldn't you consider adding Shesterkin to the mix? He's got a 241 goals against. He's 7-2-1 in his last 10 starts, and this is obviously a very high win probability that Pete and I suggest for the Rangers tonight. Speaking of high win probability, though, catching the Islanders on the second of back-to-backs, it could be a good night to look at spending up for the Florida tandem, whichever one of those guys starts, Spencer Knight or Sergei Bobrovsky. They're both $7,900. So check back to the Rotowire starting goalie grid a little bit later to get the right guy in the nets. A third option, similarly unidentified at the moment, is whoever's facing the visiting Coyotes. That's kind of the free spot on the bingo card this year, it looks like. So for this mismatch, we wait to hear if it's going to be Jordan Binnington or Billy Husso at the top of the DraftKings price board for $8,500.
All right, before we let you go, let's get your favorite value play, Paul.
There are a number of competitive matchups tonight, Jesse. So once the Leafs dispatch the Preds, he said, hopefully, there'll be plenty of channel surfing at the Bruno household, focusing on the later starts. Those should all be competitive games. My value plays among them are betting the over on the alternate total goal line in the Islanders-Panthers game, where the potent Panthers attack proves too much for the weary visitors and leads me to take the over. 6.5 bet for a 140 payoff. And the game that I'm really looking forward to on the later part of the slate is the Caps' visit to Anaheim. We've touched on Ovechkin's scoring binge since the start of the year, and despite some key injuries, the Caps are right there at the top of the league almost with 3.6 goals per game, ranking third, and right behind them are the Ducks in fourth with 3.56 goals per game, which is a nice surprise for their fans who haven't seen this kind of offense from this team in several years. This meeting of the 2 great offensive clubs should result in lots of scoring opportunities for both teams. So I'll go back to the alternate total goals prop to take the over 6.5 total for a 125 payoff.
All right, Pete, where are you looking for value?
I like what the Anaheim Ducks are bringing as far as their scoring depth, but another team on the slate that I like even more from an offensive depth standpoint is the St. Louis Blues. And I would just say anybody building a DFS lineup tonight, certainly consider whether it's Jordan Kyrou for $4,800, Pavel Buchnevich recently playing on the top line for $4,300, or if you're going bargain bin hunting, keep a close eye on Scott Perunovich, who could make his NHL debut after being recalled from Springfield of the AHL, where he was leading that league in scoring as a defenseman, tied for the league lead in the AHL with 20 points in 12 games. Also a former Hobey Baker winner from 2 seasons ago at Minnesota Duluth. If he's in the lineup, you know the recent track record. Paul mentioned Adam Fox earlier, college defenseman. Cale Makar, college stud defenseman. This could be the next guy. He could never be sent back if he makes an immediate impact. So keep a close eye. Scott Perunovich, bare minimum price, $2,500 in DraftKings.